It's so... Technical difficulties continue. Music is still way too quiet because I didn't fix it. Welcome to Oh Brother News, where the music is quiet, but the fucks are loud. I'm Gabe.
I'm James.
And we are brothers. I am suffering from a sleeping pill that I took too soon. I'm recording on a different day.
And I've
Struggles.
had 4 cups of coffee.
And we're all, as American citizens, we're all in danger of getting deported. They're now
disappeared.
They're now sending it's time for you to leave the country emails to American citizens. And they're picking up 16-year-old boys who are brown and then taking them to court where they're showing that they have a U.S. birth certificate. Then they're holding them for an additional 48 hours just to make sure that they're a citizen before releasing them. There's several women, a doctor and
lawyers.
Hilariously, a deportation, like an immigration lawyer, have got emails from the government saying it's time for you to go or else you're going to be deported. And it's like, well, where the fuck are you going to deport them? Because you have to deport someone to their country of origin, and their country of origin is America. So they're trying to take a shot at birthright citizenship via executive order, and kind of they're getting beat up in the courts. And so Mike Johnson is talking about, well, Congress has the power of funding, so we could just defund a district court. We don't have to have these pesky courts get in our way. We can just give them no money and eliminate entire courts because we don't like them. Yeah.
But I don't think any of that's really going to happen, because while Congress does have the power of the purse, and while spending bills, appropriations of money have to start in the House, it also has to go through the Senate. So that's not going to happen. It's all a bunch of threats and taunts and whatever. And besides, they've already proven that they can't do... They don't even want to manage the power of the purse. They want to leave that up to Trump and let him fight it out in court, So I'm not really worried about them cutting off funding to the courts. I don't think that's going to be able to happen. Now, what can happen, and what is happening, is, man, this Trump administration is trying hard to go around the courts and do whatever they can to defy the courts, while trying at this point, to maintain some sense of adherence to the courts. We're listening to the courts. It's kind of like how the Supreme Court said, yeah, you got to facilitate his return, man. You got to treat him as if he were never sent there. Okay, well, the only way to do that is to bring him back, and everybody else, for the due process. So last night, and we're doing this on a Saturday morning, it's the 19th. Last night, on the 18th, late, Trump administration really tried hard to do an end around the court and everybody else and all their lawyers by taking hundreds of more people on buses and shipping them to Texas. And then there's a temporary restraining order in the one district of Texas. They can't just fly them out of there. So what they did about 9 o'clock at night is they very hurriedly tried to put them all on buses and ship them off to another detention center in a different jurisdiction in Texas to put them on planes and send them to El Salvador, who, by the way, has just doubled their detention facility for U.S. people. That also came out last night. Luckily, ACLU filed cases in all the jurisdictions, like simultaneously. Everybody needs to support the ACLU. One of the cases went back before Judge Boasberg, who was the first one that ordered that the planes had to be turned around if they were in the air and they couldn't do it, where they did it anyway. that got us where we are. And he admitted that, yeah, this is completely wrong, but based on what the Supreme Court said about you have to file in the district where they're being detained, I don't have the jurisdiction because of what they said. Luckily, the ACLU also filed emergency petitions to the other districts in Texas and to the U.S. Supreme Court. And last night, this morning, early hours, whatever, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration can no longer send the Venezuelans to El Salvador under the Alien Enemies Act until they can hear the case. And I believe even though they're normally off for the summer, I believe they said they're going to be holding that case here in a month. So that's where we are right now. But it wasn't for a lack of trying on their part to quickly send a few more hundred people who have never been to court or arrested or charged with any crimes whatsoever to a gulag. Because that's what America does now.
I heard wasn't there a piece where they were getting in trouble because they were supposed to give excuse me, they were supposed to give like weekly updates on what the
Daily.
administration was doing, daily
Daily.
updates.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
to Judge Zinnis, Xinnis.
And then the lawyers were just like uh, as part like instead of giving a real update, they were just sending them like, well, these are like tweets Donald Trump is making about
Yep.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like, you're going to be held in criminal contempt. So I haven't heard like an update. I heard like that like it was going that way, but not that it actually.
Yeah, that one's is they had a couple weeks where they had to daily updates of what they're doing to facilitate his return. You know,
Mhm.
and yeah, they were providing nonsense and saying nothing, and
And
you know
now they said that they want the names of like who exactly
exactly.
is doing what and what
Yep.
are they not doing, because
So
they're going to take that list and basically
mhm,
give hold those people in contempt up to and including probably Homan.
exactly, and so when they ruled that hey, this is probable cause of contempt and everything else, because they're not doing this stuff,
Hmm.
the Trump administration appealed it. Right? They appealed that. Actually, that was Judge Boasberg who gave the contempt ruling that got appealed. And on Tuesday, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, with a conservative, majority, a Reagan appointee, somebody else, they unanimously ruled that absolutely the government is in the wrong, and uh, they what everybody's talking is like a blistering opinion, right? Like they said that the Trump administration is trying to reduce the rule of law to lawlessness, and yeah, it's a 7-page ruling. They said that the Trump administration's assertions, quote, should be shocking not only to the judges but to the it is. It said the assertions in the case should be shocking not only to the judges but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear. And yeah, they went off, they really just went off on them, Uh,
So how does that play out? Like say they hold, I don't know, say they hold some fairly high up people. They say, okay, well,
I
Homan
was thinking about that. I was thinking about that.
is the top guy. He's held in contempt. Put him
Well,
in jail.
I can tell you how
Like
that's going to happen.
what's going to happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's what's going to happen. Here's what could happen. In, let's say, best case scenario. Okay, best case scenario. The Trump administration is complete contempt of court. Right? They are contempt of this. We are ordering U.S. Marshals to go arrest Stephen Miller, Pam Bondi, Tom Homan, and Donald Trump. Okay, and put them in jail. And you know
Okay.
what happens? Donald Trump then issues a pardon to everybody. That's what's going to happen.
Ah.
Best case scenario, they get ordered to jail for contempt of court. It's a federal judge. It's federal. The president will just issue pardons to everybody.
Mm.
I mean, really, the only thing, it's like Nixon, man. Here. And people were talking about this before in other podcasts. the whole the whole system only works if the federal government observes and enforces the law. If you have a president whose whole mission is antithetical to the law, and they have no respect for the law, and they don't care about what the court says, they're going to do what they want to do. It only works if they do it. Nixon, had all those tapes. He knew what his tape said, right? He knew that if those tapes got released, the Supreme Court ruled it, if they ruled that he had to release the tapes, he knew he was done, They ruled he had to release the tapes. Nixon could have just done a Trump. Said, yeah, no, burn them, burn the tapes. Sorry, Supreme Court, there are no tapes. They went up in smoke. There was an accident. We can't produce anything. Sorry. Nixon, as corrupt as him and Agnew and everybody were, he followed the court. He said, yeah, fuck,
I
All
think
right.
that he did, though,
This
because he didn't have the entire Republican Party willing to say
he did for a long time. There's big Republican majorities when Nixon was in power.
no, because like he didn't want to get he had a majority, but he was going to be impeached, and he knew that he was going to be
Mm-hmm.
convicted.
Yeah,
That's
and
the difference.
he released the tapes anyway when the Supreme Court ruled it.
But I mean, no,
He,
but I think he released the tapes because he knew, like, if he didn't, he would be impeached and convicted for not doing it.
he knew
Because
he would be if he did release them, though.
right,
he,
so like, as I'm saying, like he knew either way he was fucked. So he was like, I'll break fewer laws and do it this way.
I don't know. Either way, I mean, but the tide didn't really turn on the Republicans until the tapes came out. Up until then, there were still plenty of people being like, "Oh no, fuck this! This is a witch hunt,"
Mm.
So either way, this administration would not do what Nixon did. This administration, I don't believe for a second, will. I think they're going to try as hard as they can to try to claim that they're following the law, even when it's so obvious and apparent on its face that they are not. But until it becomes so clear, like that the U.S. Supreme Court just drops all their legalese and just says, fuck you, you're breaking the law, you have to do this, stop. Very plain English. I mean, and if they do that, then that'll be when the Trump administration's really backed into a corner. You know what I mean? And then we're going to see what really happens.
So we're not very far away from that
No, we're not at all.
because the Supreme Court has already said you have to facilitate his return.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
But then they left that little wiggle room in there. They took
what's the
exception to
wiggle
the word.
room?
The wiggle room was Zinnis ruled that they have to facilitate and effectuate his return. The Supreme Court, they largely upheld it, 9-0. They said, we agree the Trump administration has to facilitate his return and treat him as if, he was never sent there in the first place and give him due process and all that. They said, we will take some exception with the word effectuate. It is not clear what that means because the administration still has their Article 2 powers, and it's unclear if she has the authority to direct them to effectuate them because there's like a definition of what does effectuate mean.
What does it mean?
To make it happen.
Mm.
So that's why the Trump administration has then been playing games saying, they're a sovereign nation. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to go to war? Is the district court trying to make us declare war on El Salvador if they don't want to return him? The district
I don't
court
know.
can't. They
I
can't make us
imagine
go.
I would like for you to say, "Hey, we're going to put sanctions on you.
But you can't
We're
direct
going
the
to
federal
put
government to put sanctions. You see what I'm
what
saying? That's what they're saying.
the direction is you have to do
Whatever you
everything in
can.
your power.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do enough that you would feel confident making the argument in court that you've done
Yes.
everything you
Yeah.
can do to accomplish this thing
Exactly.
because that's what we're telling you have to do.
And that's why,
So
like the
if
Fourth
that
Circuit.
means you got to invade El Salvador, that's
Mm-hmm.
how you think that's what's necessary to prove that you did everything you could, then you better fucking invade El Salvador. If that means go uh, on to camera with Bukele and you say to him, like, hey, the courts said, you know, Kilmar needs to come back to the U.S. and go through a court process,
Yeah.
and I'm going to comply with them. So, what is it going to take for us to get him home? Like,
Yeah.
can you send him home? Do we need to send you something? Do we need to
Yeah.
send you a plane?
Exactly.
What's it going to
Exactly.
take to get this done? Because I have to do this. You're in the meeting with the cameras rolling. You could just say that and then see what Bukele says.
Yeah, and so like here,
Like,
and that's what the Fourth Circuit was saying too, because like Zennis and everybody saying get to facilitate it. And so, like the Trump officials, like I said, they've been saying that will facilitate. What does that mean? And then that's when you had them, like Tom Homan said, we will facilitate his return if he presents himself. If Abrego Garcia presents himself at a U.S. port of entry, we will facilitate him coming into the country by letting him do so. That's what they said. So the Fourth Circuit, the Court of Appeals actually had to tell him. They actually said in part of the ruling was when they actually said that the word facilitate is an active verb. It means you have to do something, you know.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what they're talking about. They said that they have where was I at now? Yeah, it says the argument that it must do is remove any domestic barriers to his return is not well taken in light of the Supreme Court's command that the government facilitate his return from El Salvador. You know, they said that's when they said that they would reduce the rule of law. Reduce the rule of law to lawlessness and tarnish the very values for which Americans of diverse views and persuasions have always stood. And they actually had to tell him though that it was an active verb, which means you have to do something.
So
And,
this whole thing is a test of two things.
mm-hmm.
It's one, can we get away with um, suspending due process?
Yep,
Number
that's what they
one.
want to do. If they can get away with it one time, all they need is a precedent where they can get away with it. If they're allowed to get away with this, they will do that same playbook every time.
So we're going to come back to that because this is not a smart way to do this, even if that's what you're trying to do. But we're going to come back to that. And the second thing they're trying to do is they're trying to see what happens if they just defy the Supreme Court and
Mm-hmm.
see how it lands with the public and see how much people care and if the um, you
Mm-hmm.
know carnival of executive orders
And that's why they do
chaos
exactly.
is enough cover for it to not be a big deal.
And that's why they're trying so hard to smear this dude, you know. And he may not be a good guy, you know.
But
They were this week. They're going out there pumping out the stories about, oh, hey, his wife years ago started to file a claim for domestic abuse. You know, she recanted it or whatever. But hey, it's out there. And then they started putting out another story yesterday. It's like, look, he was pulled over for speeding, and the officer suspected he might be doing trafficking or something, but they let him off with a warning. But they suspected it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because he had
or
eight people in the car.
there was an officer. So like
Or that
his thing
whole
started like a year ago.
That's our lot
So
more, more than
so
that.
there was an officer who said that he had a confidential informant that
Yeah,
said that he was a part of MS-13.
yeah. This is a long
Uh,
time ago, by the way.
this was
Yeah,
like a year ago,
way more than a year ago. Yeah,
way more than a year ago.
yeah,
Okay,
way more than a
so
year ago.
I thought it
He
was
came here
just
when he was 16. I think it was 2019 when that happened. He came here when he was 16 years old, a long time ago, and a couple years later at a hearing, that's when they had him in there in the when they were booking him in there. The corrupt former cop, the drunk
yeah,
who was
yeah,
also fired. Yeah, that guy.
and then, like that cop got fired for for drunkenly driving his cop car into a house, like of just some people.
Among other things.
He just drove into a house. Yeah, among other things. And so he was fired. So
Hmm.
on that guy's word, there was a CI who's never been questioned by anyone but this cop or even identified from, several years ago. This is the basis. And then in that case, even the judge was like, yeah, well, he's here on asylum from El Salvador because they were threatening to rape his sister and kill his mother, and that's why his brother came. And then when he got a little older, the gang said that they were going to rape his mother and kill his sister and murder his father. What, you know what I mean? They said they were going to kill his family
They're extorting the family
if
for the
if he
money.
didn't join the gang.
Hmm.
And so he left and came here at
As a
16.
minor. As a minor, yeah, 16.
Yeah, because the gang was like, "You're old enough to be a soldier. You're old enough to be responsible for us raping your sister if you don't
Yeah,
get out there and soldier for us." And he was like, "Yeah, I'd rather leave the country than do that."
yeah. So this is 2019 when he got picked up and they thought he might be MS-13.
Yeah.
2019.
So like he had a thing saying you can't deport him to El Salvador since then. And that
Yep.
so like if you're gonna pick somebody, I'm sure that there is somebody from somewhere that they could make a case that has a criminal record at all,
Mm-hmm.
that has been at least accused of a crime in a court, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's somebody. So like I don't feel like Kilmar is their choice for the poster child. And I think that it would have been much smarter for them to pick somebody else who is a criminal
Well, here's the thing, though. They
or who
did.
is a gang member,
Yeah,
and be like,
they
oh,
picked hundreds of people. The thing is, they had no control over which story got out. They were just rounding up everybody. That's what they're doing. They're rounding up hundreds at a time. 77% of the people that we sent to El Salvador have absolutely no criminal record whatsoever.
okay, but that means
77%.
the
It's 60 minutes.
23% have some kind of criminal record.
Yes, they
I
were
mean,
very low levels. They were like they were like court like traffic stuff. They were nothing. They were not even
like
violent
the
offenders.
point that
60
I'm
Minutes did
getting
a
at
big
is like
hour-long show about
there's
this.
probably at least one MS-13 gang member who did some murdering, some
Hmm?
drug selling, some raping, some violent something.
Yeah, 60 Minutes did an hour-long thing on this. I think they said it was four people. Four of the 200 and whatever people. Four people.
Okay, force. Jesus Christ, that's really low. But they should be
Yeah.
like trotting out the 0.02% and talking about those guys, and they should have just not fought it on Kilmar.
Yeah.
They should have been. I mean, they the first thing that they said
They
was
didn't want it.
this
They
was
didn't.
a
They had no
clerical
choice in this.
error.
They didn't have no. Here's the thing, though. They had no choice in this. Nobody even knew that these people were in El Salvador until they saw them on TV. They didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell any lawyers. They didn't tell any family members. They still have not officially released the names of it. All the people we know who are there because of open source stuff and people looking at photos and looking at the video and identifying tattoos and identifying the people. The government still won't even release the names of it. Everybody had to do, all the journalists had to do this investigative work on their own. They're still claiming state secrets. They can't even say who they sent.
State secrets.
Yeah,
And now they're sending it's time for you to go emails
to
to
everybody.
Iraqi Christians, like Iraqi Christian families living in Kansas or Oklahoma or whatever. I saw like
Hmm.
a Rachel Maddow thing on it, and the like her thing was talking about how there when people have community around them, like the communities are standing up to this. And there was somebody, I think it was somebody from the Middle East who was here as a permanent resident, and they had planned for him to get targeted because he was part of protesting for Palestine. And so they figured he would. So they had like a group chat where they were watching him. Like they had the neighbors ready, watching out for ICE and ready to take video. And they already had lawyers with um, injunctions just ready to go to stop him from being bounced around to some other jurisdiction and to say oh no, he can't be deported.
Hmm.
And so that guy was okay because they picked him up at his house, and his neighbors they video recorded the whole thing, and then they immediately called the lawyer, and the lawyer went to the judge, and the judge put an immediate injunction. So they were ready for the
Plus
one
12.
guy, right? So
Yeah.
so that guy was okay. But then she goes on and is talking about how she's like, oh yeah, there's this group of Iraqi Christians in some bumblefuck state, um and they're talking to the people in the community. They're talking to the people in the church, and they're like, oh yeah, our community. We can't believe that our community members that we love is being targeted by our government that we love. They're not here legally. They're just they came into the country legally. So it's like a mother of and her three kids who came into the country legally seeking asylum because she's a woman and doesn't want to go to Iraq where she's gonna be fucking stoned for not wearing her fucking hijab or whatever. So like the thing that killed me
Mhm.
in that story is that these exact people in this church are most likely people who fucking voted for Trump. And the thing that they're saying, like, oh, we're so surprised that they're going after our community member, our
Yeah,
government,
Utah
and
and
it's like,
everything.
dude, no, this was the most obvious shit ever.
Yep.
Like we told you, we screamed from the rooftops for
Hmm.
months, over and over and over again, that this is what was happening.
Yep.
And so, like, to continue with a rant about this is what is happening. Okay, you look at this chaos. You look at this stuff with the tariffs and how it's just like, a monkey throwing shit at the wall. Uh, like levels of intelligence. And like we're totally just going to get decimated in this trade war by China because they
Oh
can
yeah.
just
Yeah.
dump some of the bonds that they have.
Everybody's been doing it, friends and foes alike.
So only 7 trillion of the 37 trillion in bonds are held by foreign countries, but they only have to dump like, half a trillion for them to like spike the interest rate, like drop the
Hmm.
value of the bonds, like kick the ass of the dollar. Like, and the US isn't China's biggest trading partner. The
No, very little.
China trades with it's like a block of Southeast Asian countries. That's their
Hmm.
biggest trading partner, and their second biggest trading partner is the EU,
Yep.
and then it's the United States. So like, we're not even like the first priority, for as a trading partner. They're going to beat our ass. You take this stuff, you take the tariff stuff, you take the the fact that like he's not even trying, like despite having the House and the Senate, he's not even trying to do anything as law. He's doing everything as executive order, and he's constantly breaking the law. Like, it's like he's going out of his way to piss off his base. Like he hasn't done anything to bring down the price of eggs. In fact, the nation's largest egg producer, Calmaine, announced quarterly profits of 509 million, which is more than 3 times what it made a year ago. And the reason is because, like, yeah, you have a little bit of a shortage, so you kill some birds, but then you triple the price. And because it's basically a monopoly on eggs. And the only reason that you don't is the reason that the prices of eggs came down under Biden, which is
Yep.
because they say, oh, we're going to investigate you for monopoly. And just threatening to investigate them was enough for them to be like, so you know what? We'll just lower the prices of eggs. And then they were like, that'll do. I guess we won't investigate you then. Now the egg prices are lower, so everything's fine. But Trump's not going to do that.
No.
you know so like he's not doing the things for people that he said he was going to do. And this leads to my theory, okay, which is really just the believe, like, take him at face value theory. Because he was saying at like a Christian event, and this was before the election, this was in like the few months before the election. He was saying like, we really need you to get out and vote this one time. Like, after this, like, we'll fix it. Like, we'll have it all fixed, and you won't
What
need to
to vote
vote
again?
anymore.
You won't need to do it. Yeah, it'll be so good you won't need to worry about voting anymore.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
these are his literal words, and I'll link the clip. I'll find that one. But he literally said, like, we'll fix it. You won't have to vote anymore, just this one time. Like, and then they're disenfranchising women also. The stuff with the Save Act, we're gonna make it so 70 million women can't vote unless they go get a passport so they can prove that they're citizens. And let that go even further and be like, oh, you can't run, you can't do it, you can't do this, you can't do that if you're not a citizen. And then start making everyone prove individually in court that they're a citizen, or like face deportation or whatever. Make that everyone's individual problem. Like, you're tanking the economy. You're not fixing the things that you said you would fix. You're defying the courts. Like, you're not producing anything of value except for, like, the the hot stock market tips as you're manipulating things. And like, I don't know, I guess it's like good for lawyers because they can have lots more lawyer work to do, but that which is never in short supply. So I think that the ship has already sailed and the game is already over, and that that the thing that is emboldening them to be so lawless, to go like, yeah, we're gonna go after Medicare, and have the people who are the congressmen and the senators who would have to stand up and say, you know what, I am not cool voting for the destruction of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid because my district relies on it and I'm going to get crucified in my next election if I
Well, that's
you
already
know get rid of something that 40% of my constituents take advantage of. uh and it's because they've got it rigged. They've got it planned out. So like there's not going to be the Democrats coming back in the midterms and taking control and impeaching Trump. There's not going to be them like coming in and passing a real budget or doing any investigations because they're not going to win any elections,
I
because
just
there's not going to be any real elections ever again. This is my theory, is that like
yeah.
when he said like it's rigged and it's not, don't worry about it, we got it, you're never going to have to vote again, he meant it, and that is now the case.
Well, I my my negative doomsday self, part of my brain, it says that's true, but I find that there's a lot of evidence. There is still a lot of evidence, if you're looking for it, that that's not true. Okay, you have to look for it and not get lost in all the deluge of horrible news, right? Because, like, as you said that about the Republicans, first of all, you have approval, you have polling, right? And he's tanking, he's going underwater, right? On everything, handling on deportation, handling on the economy, everything else. You now have, like, there were like 12 or 16 Republicans, House Republicans, that already sent word to Johnson that, hey, that budget you want us to vote on here shortly, it's dead on arrival. We are not okaying, gutting Medicare and Medicaid, right? So there is some talk of that. You had Lisa Murkowski out there yesterday in Alaska when she was talking about, oh yeah, I know, we're all afraid, the retribution's real, and blah blah blah. I'm going to continue doing what I can, using my voice, doing this and blah blah blah. But yeah, it's real. These are the crazy times we're living in right now. There are signs of people like, and here's the thing: it's not that they're courageous politicians. They're not. They're not courageous politicians. What they are doing is reading the tea leaves. And like Nicole Wallace had a big thing on there talking about, like, you can't make people eat sand, right? Trump can go out there and say, oh, grocery prices are down and everything's going great and we're making America great again and we're getting rich off these tariffs, right? But everybody sees this shit's not true. He can say prices are down, but people, even his base, are realizing, oh shit, things are not going down. What he keeps saying that things are getting cheaper, but the store when I go to pay for it's not cheaper. But he says it's cheaper.
Because nothing ever gets
You know,
cheaper.
I know. But like so like even numbers among his supporters are dropping. He is I mean, like I said, I think last week we talked about his polling. He's only beaten himself for the fastest drop in polling ever as a new president,
Mm-hmm.
and it's continuing. Another week later, he's gone down another set, like 6 or 7 points on something. I mean, he's dropping fast, right? Um, the biggest loss ever of independents and Democrats. Obviously, Democrats always hate him. Independents now are way upside down on him. Own Republicans are going against him. You know what I mean? Um, And so you see little signs of, all right, we need to make it to a midterm, you know? And yes, while they're trying some things, they're trying to rig it. Like that executive order on for elections, for federal elections. Remember they're trying to do that
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to do the other executive orders and everything else, and this, these other, the Save Act and everything. Save Act is not going anywhere. But they're still trying things, right? And they want to rig it. They want to do that. Hasn't happened yet, I don't think. You know? And if he keeps going the way he's going, like a Bulwark podcast, Sarah Longwell talk about that. Her and this other guy, they were talking, and like, hey, there's actually signs of life. You had Chris Van Hollen go down to El Salvador, and before El Salvador's president was like, I can't do anything. What am I supposed to do? Take a terrorist out of here? And what do? They took him out for a photo op and put him in a little restaurant to meet with Van Hollen, because Van Hollen wasn't going anywhere,
Dude, I was shocked that he is alive.
I
I
was shocked that
I
he
was
didn't
under
look.
like
Yeah,
my assumption was that they were being like he's a terrorist in preparation for when it comes out that he's
it
dead
was too
because they
quick.
knew that he was dead.
It's too quick. They weren't going to kill him right off. You have to wait until the interest dies down a little bit. Besides, El Salvador, that prison is meant to torture these people for long, long times. People that go there and they get beat over and over, they get tortured for years and years and years and years, and eventually they get killed. And that's why in El Salvador, people aren't allowed to talk about the people who they round up and put in there. When they put somebody in CCOT, nobody is allowed to talk about them. People can't talk about them. You know, and they knew in America, hey, they just sent them here. They're not going to go fucking kill them right off the bat. You know what I mean? Because,
I don't know. I thought he
well,
would have just.
I think if he's there for another year, he'll be dead. If he's there for another 6 months, he'll probably be dead. I think a lot of those people, the gay kid, I'm worried about the gay kid who got sent there, man. Fucking makeup artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. And actually, I was wrong. I remember I said like four. It was actually 12. 12 out of the 238 people we put there had a criminal record.
I mean, I thought that the reason I thought that he was dead is because to me it would have made more sense
Just
to
to
be
bring him back.
like,
Oh, mistake. Everybody else is
ah, our
criminals.
bad. Yeah, here, take him back. But everybody else is a fucking asshole.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
it's like not in the news cycle anymore. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
You prevent all of the like Supreme Court challenges and you're having to fire your lawyers because they're not arguing enough.
Yeah, no.
Of your
Yeah.
crazy bullshit or like because they're trying to like still have a law degree in the future.
Yeah.
It's
No,
like
they
still be
fired the
able to
guy.
practice law.
They fired the person for coming up with the only rationale, the only possible defense in a court of law that they could make. What else could that lawyer have said other than it was an administrative error? What else
Yeah.
could they say? They can't say anything else. You got a guy with no criminal record, hasn't been arrested for anything, never got Miranda rights, didn't have a day in court, didn't have anything, has an order barring his deportation because he's already proven, it'd be to the court satisfaction that he has legitimate here and he can't be sent back to El Salvador for credible fear of life. And you have so there's an order against sending him back. What else are you going to say if you're the Justice Department lawyer that doesn't just say, "Yeah, fuck you, we did it because we want to do it, bitch." I mean, other than saying that in court, what else could he have said other than his an error? And so they
He
fired the
sh-
guy. Now they're like, and now in the court of public opinion, they're trying to say that lawyer was a leftist saboteur. He was purposely trying to tank this case. That guy is MS-13 after he was Agua, whatever.
what they should have done
Just bring him
is
back.
had
Oh my God.
is
We
had
are,
Donald Trump issue an executive order that says being an immigrant is a crime. And
they already say it,
then
though.
and then they could have referred to that order and said, currently there's an executive order that says being an immigrant is a crime, and this executive order supersedes all other forms of authority, and you know
Well, they've already
leave
done that.
or
by executive order
something to that
requesting asylum.
effect.
They've already
You know.
done the executive order. There's already an executive order that says requesting asylum. If you come here to request asylum, right? If you come
Hmm.
to a U.S. port of entry and you're requesting asylum, that is illegal. You are now subject to deportation because you came to the country to request asylum. They've already designated everybody who's requesting asylum as criminals. They already did that
So why wouldn't they just make that argument? Like, oh yeah, being an immigrant itself is criminal.
because it
Like,
doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter what they say is. It doesn't. They can say anything. Yes, it's a crime. Having brown skin is punishable by death. They can say that. Whatever. Cool. Executive order. Hey, look. He was born outside the country. That means he is subject to the death penalty. Cool story, bro. Go to court. That's the whole crux of it. It doesn't matter what this guy Garcia did. It doesn't matter if he is an MS-13 guy who really did beat his wife and he was trafficking people to that construction job. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Okay. He is all of those things. Supreme Court says, yeah, cool story, bro. Good job. Yeah, he's an MS-13 person. Okay, cool. Why aren't you in court to get your deportation order to put him there? Because they can't take these people to court because they don't have evidence for this. They just want to round everybody up and get them out of here. They want to hit their quota. I mean, it's like It's like a software company that sets a deadline of something unrealistic, and then you rush to go do it, and you have to skirt every kind of roadblock that would get in the way of that. And the courts are a big roadblock because it takes time. You can't be deporting
Mm,
tens of millions of people in a year or two if you have to take every person to court to prove that they're a criminal. Why should they have to prove that somebody's a criminal? You know,
can't
they
release software that doesn't have bugs if QA keeps pointing out that we have bugs, so let's
yeah,
just do no QA.
exactly. It's the same
I
thing.
see. I
It's the
see.
exact same thing. If you don't have testing, they have no cases. If you don't have
Mhm.
a court case, you know, you can't say somebody's not a criminal if you have a court case.
I mean, I get that strategy. I just feel like there would have been like a quieter way to execute it. Like,
Well, they would have been
if
completely
your
quiet
goal
had.
is to like
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know what? If it wasn't for them, here's what it is. It's a self-inflicted wound. Had they not been so gung ho about PR and trying to make it look like they're being tough on the border. Well,
Mhm.
first of all, that's what they need because they want to be the perception. They want the perception that they're doing all this stuff to make America great and getting rid of all these illegals, right? So they
Mhm.
set up all the fucking camera crews there to watch them as they're getting on the plane and they're watching them as they're getting off the plane and everything else, right?
Mhm.
If they wouldn't have done that, there wouldn't have been a way to identify these people. Most of them. There wouldn't have been a
Yeah.
face. You wouldn't have 60 Minutes wouldn't have been able to identify all these people, right? To say who they are. Oh my god, it's a gay makeup artist who's never done anything. What the fuck? There's this guy, the soccer player? What? The soccer player?
Mhm.
His crime is having a tattoo of a soccer ball with the Real Madrid tattoo and said dad underneath of it because his dad died. What? That's the
Wow.
proof? What? There's all these other things here. They wouldn't have had any of that if it wasn't for the trying to show off. Salvador's trying to do it to show off, show how tough they are, and look at this. And Trump's trying to do it to show off how tough he is on these illegals and their promises made, promises kept. Had they not done that, 99.9% of those people, they would have just been disappeared. Nobody would have known. They were. It was dumb luck that they got caught because they were trying to make a show of it. You know, I mean, there's other things they're doing that aren't making the news. This was 2 months ago, right? 2 months ago, like Rolling Stone did like a good article here. It says ICE's next deportation target is unaccompanied children, right? And there's a memo here, right? Uh, it says, here we go. It's an internal government memo titled "Unaccompanied Alien Children Joint Initiative Field Implementation." Okay, and here's what they're making a change in here. Says unaccompanied. It says it states that children will be deported if they have existing deportation orders or served with a notice to appear in immigration court. And they are labeling the children now. Here's their change. They're labeling children as flight risks. Right? They said that the minors, it says the remaining minors are priorities of public safety or border security. So it's a severe departure from their usual prioritization targeting adults with criminal records. They're just saying that children are flight risks, man. Hey, look, there's a child who's supposed to be here. So they said children who arrive in the U.S. without a parent or legal guardian, they're put into the care of the Office of Refugee Resettlement until they can be placed with a sponsor. Right. Most of these children have histories of abuse or seeking safety from threats of violence. Right. They've been trafficked or smuggled in. Right.
Mhm.
They've been exploited as child laborers. Things like that. So what they're going to do now is when they get them in there, they're going to issue the deportation order. Right. Here we go. Hey, they have to be deported. That's a kid here. Oh, it's a flight risk. They're not they're not, and then they're just going to ship them out of there. And who is going to be getting their names? Who's going to be putting them on TV? Who's going to be saying, "Oh my God, that's whatever." They're doing a lot of things off camera. They only got in trouble because they tried to do this on camera. And when they try to make a show of it to help his poll numbers, because that's all that matters to him is their polling, that's how they landed it even more hot water. You know,
This is
and
so
they're
weird
probably
because he
only
could
doing
do
that. They
something
probably only
common sense to like fix his poll numbers.
Well, the thing is, the polling numbers, and this is probably why it's a two-edged sword. A, they prefer to talk about this than the economy because he's less underwater on immigration because there's a lot more racist people or people who just don't realize who all is being wrapped up in this. You know?
Because the stock market is still falling. Like the economy is still
Oh
fucked.
yeah,
Like
and the bond market's
he fucking broke the whole economic world order, and it is still broken. Everyone is still making deals to not include us, and like
mm-hmm.
we're still fucked. Like just because he paused the tariffs to
Mm-hmm.
only 10%, like we're still fucked.
Yeah. We're heading towards an economic collapse way worse than 2008. You know, way worse than, what do they call it, Black Friday, in the 80s or whatever.
Yeah.
We're going to have a fucking huge crash. But that's why, and that's another reason I think they're so apt to have this fight, because he's still stronger on polling with immigration than he is with focusing on the economy, right? Got no good news to come out of the economy,
I mean, if you
you know?
cared about
And then,
polling, you wouldn't go after Medicaid.
but the Republican Congress, they're not, I don't know that they are. They
Like
want to, but
if you cared about polling, you wouldn't be talking about how you're gonna go to Greenland. If you cared about polling, you wouldn't send anyone
no, that's the way, no, because that's
you
the way
wouldn't
Trump,
deport anyone to a fucking torture prison in
no,
another
that's the way,
country.
no, you're missing the point of Trump, man, because that's how he avoids the worst. That's how the worst. In a normal presidency, something really bad happens. Let's look at Biden, okay? The Biden administration, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Biden was kind of hamstrung in the agreement with Trump. Trump, negotiated with the Taliban to have us surrender the country back to the Taliban. And Biden was like,
Mm-hmm.
fuck. All right, what do I do? Do I agree to what the previous administration has already, made this deal? They've already made this, this deal. And do I keep everybody in Afghanistan? Which everybody's over. We're all done with Afghanistan. We shouldn't be there, but shit, it's kind of boxed in, right? He made some move that, okay, we're going to pull out. We're going to get out. They had this timeline, whatever, and it sucked, and it was a little bit messy and a little bit chaotic, right? Okay.
It was pretty
Now,
fucking. I feel like they could have done a better job of.
yeah, maybe. But either way, long story short, that was the news story for, a year. And then they kept talking about it after that. But that was the thing. Now, in the Trump administration, if that was going to happen, thank you, if they had something horrible happen, like let's say tariffs. Okay, tariffs. Oh shit, the economy collapsed. The economy is collapsing. Okay, what's the best way that Trump has always used to take the bite off of a story? Shit, man, spread that shit around all over the walls, man. Give them a whole bunch of shit to talk about. They can't focus on everything. And when you spread the shit around so much and there's so much chaos, yeah, there's a lot less of people talking about this, because instead of everybody talking about this, just like when you saw that you're protesting, when you went to that protest, the Tesla
Mm-hmm.
protest, there are people talking, yeah, we're mad at Elon. We're mad about Medicare. We're mad about this. We're mad about the federal workers being fired. We're mad about this. You break everybody up. You have little segments. Everybody can't talk about everything. Everybody can't be this podcast. We can't even do this every day. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many stories that we don't get to talk about. We only do this once a week. It's news is
Mm-hmm.
the same way. So hey, you know what? Let's just fucking talk about Greenland. Let's throw the Greenland bone out there. Yeah, we're gonna take over Greenland. Hey, Canada's story's quieted down a little bit. Hey, let's talk about them being the 51st state again. Yeah, let's get people riled up about that. Let's get them riled up about this. Let's do this. Hey, we already have 145% tariffs. Let's just fucking say 245% tariffs, because that's what it is now. You know, let's try
Mm-hmm.
that to take the story off of this. If you just keep, it's like popcorn, man. They just keep having popcorn go off with another thing. People can't focus on everything. And if they can't focus on everything, then you can get away with more illegal shit. Because
This is
people are
the Steve
scattered.
Bannon flooding the zone.
Yeah, it's a flooding the zone. And it works. But the downside is, yes, that works. That's why Trump got reelected anyway, because people forgot about how much shit was bad the first time, and that's what they're doing. They're spreading around so much that people can't even remember when he was running, 2024, and he's running. I'm like, how have people forgotten about all this shit? It's very easy now because you flood the zone with so much bad shit. People tune out. People tune out. They can't keep up. Whatever. They move on. And then a lot of shit goes on that people didn't even know about. Oh, I didn't even know they did that. I didn't know, remember that. That's what it is.
I mean, even as he's doing this, like several of the things that he's doing are against, like, take the tariffs, right? Like you're gonna do this whole trade war on the idea that you'll have manufacturing jobs come back to America. Like that under, like, that's the goal, right? Like that's how you're selling it, right? You're like, oh, we're gonna have manufacturing jobs come back to America, which, like, that's a whole other conversation about why that's not a great idea. But like you're doing that, and at the same time, you're also dismantling funding for the CHIPS Act, which
Mm-hmm.
itself was meant to make it so that 115,000 manufacturing jobs would come to America. It's like doing the I can't remember what the word was, like institutional incentive, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
government's just going to like incent the companies to build stuff here instead of somewhere else. They're going to give them the reason to. So it's like, oh, we don't want to have more manufacturing in the United States, except not this manufacturing. Like,
Although, here's the thing, though, and I posted a link to this in the Notion, right? Which you put there. It's Jeffrey Sachs. It's a YouTube video, um, right here. Sachs,
which
right?
one is it?
This professor, the one I'm
Oh,
typing
that
right
one.
here. All right. Even if his idea was we're going to put these tariffs to bring manufacturing back, the funny thing is that's not what even Trump. I mean, when Trump was saying about what these tariffs were and why they put the percentages they did on what countries they did and everything, it never had anything to do with bringing manufacturing back. It had to do with how he thinks we are getting ripped off because of trade imbalances, right? And that video I linked. I want to put a link to it. When we post this, it's probably one of the best videos, his best takedowns ever of why he's an idiot. And he's a professor, and he's like, I teach this on literally day 2 of my whatever economics class. Because on the second day, if he was in my class for more than 2 days, he would have learned this. Because it's day 2 stuff, right? And he thinks that if you buy more from a country than they buy from you, that's unfair. They're ripping you off. And he gave this scenario. He's like, hey, if I go shopping and I go to here, I go to Trader Joe's and I go to Myers and I go to Home Depot, and I spent all this money there, right? And, but hey, they're ripping me off. Look at this. And he has his bills and he spends more on his credit cards. He goes out there and buys everything with credit cards. He says, hey, I only had 1,500, 1,500 this week I got paid, but I spent $2,000 at these stores. Those stores are ripping me off, right? And that's exactly what it is. We pay more, we spend more than we have coming in from taxes and everything, you know, which is
Mm-hmm.
why there's imbalances. That's why we're going to debt. Simple as that. So putting the tariff on them to say, hey, we need to get more money, it's just a tax. I mean, it's just that's why the tax is there. It's to bring down the imbalance. You can raise more revenue because you're spending more money from foreign places, more imports. It's just stupid. He doesn't understand what it's. If it was, we're going to put a 150% tariff on all steel coming into the United States, and we want all manufacturers of steels to build plants here. We'll give you a credit to build up your plant and get it kickstarted in 6 months. That would be a plan. But that's not his plan. His plan wasn't even to bring manufacturing jobs back. He just thinks it will magically happen. And he doesn't understand the tariffs, which is why it's stupid.
I heard this um, Bill Burr thing where he was talking about the tariffs and the manufacturing jobs, and he's like, if you think back to when we were having manufacturing, it was like beginning of the 19th century, and we had like 5-year-olds in coal mines and 5-year-olds in
Mm-hmm.
factories working like 12 and 16-hour days doing dangerous shit and stuff with chemicals, etc. And we were making everything. We were making clothes, we were making chemicals, we were making metal, we were making wood, we were making shoes. Like, we made all those things here, and like nobody made any money. And so people came out. Well, none of the workers made any money. Okay, like it all went to the robber barons, and people came out and they started protesting. It's like, no, we want fair wages, we want to unionize. And like the robber barons hired people and like used police forces and security forces to go
Mm-hmm.
out and literally beat them to death.
Mm-hmm.
And like they literally went to war to say, give us more of the money. And uh And they didn't. Instead, they said, okay, we'll just send these jobs over to China where they'll still do it for like pennies a day. Okay. And when they talk about like bringing the factories back, they're like, oh, it will in order to bring this back, like we're paying them only $6 an hour over there or whatever, $5 a week. So to bring it back, we have to pay people American wages, and you want us to pay them well. Like, you don't want us to just pay them like the minimum American wage. You want us to pay them good American wages. So like now, like a pair of Nikes is going to cost like $2,000 instead of 250. And the reason that the cost of the shoe would go up in that way isn't because like they would be paying labor that much more. It's because they're unwilling to sacrifice the profit margin that they
Mm-hmm.
get when they're getting the labor for so cheap
Yep.
and they're buying the supplies for so cheap. Like that's the real reason. It's
Yep.
not that like paying people a decent amount. It's that the stock buybacks and the CEO pay and the like all the people at the top who are siphoning off the majority of the money are unwilling to stop siphoning off all the money, and that's why the cost of things would go up if you brought it back domestically. And so we got rid of all, and then if like you bring in some of like the stuff that you hear from Scott Galloway talking about the why the tariffs are stupid, like we got rid of all these low um, these low skill, low paying jobs. Like you're making things like you're making shoes, you're making clothes, you're making all this like you're making raw materials, stuff that we don't want to do here, like right because it's like it's tedious and it doesn't pay well and it doesn't have much skill.
Yep.
And so instead, the jobs we want to have are things where we're doing like financial services. Like we don't want to build the iPhones, we want to design the iPhones, we want to write software for the iPhones, we want to invent the chips that somebody else, screws together in another country. So like we're outsourcing all of these like high skill, high margin, highly paid things. We're making technologies and building vaccine software and whatever, all these sorts of things. That's what we're exporting is like these high margin things, and we're importing all these things that are like low
Cheap.
value, low margin,
Yep.
and like that is actually a good thing. Like Americans, like there's already I can't remember what the
Vibe. It's the
what the
whole vibe.
numbers were, but there's already like like a whole bunch of jobs that no one is doing. That there's like unemployment's already so low that there's 10,000 manufacturing jobs in America that like cannot hire someone to do them now
Mm-hmm.
today because no one will do them because they don't pay very well. It's not desirable work. It has no prestige. It doesn't give you any money. Like
Yeah, and exactly. There's a. I just put this stuff in the Notion too because I was reading about this early in the week. There's actually been polling out here, right? Um, there's polling out just this last week. It said, plenty of people agree that U.S. should bring back its industrial sector. Right? Is in August. Actually, is in August. It was a few months ago. 80% of Americans in August said that the country will be better off if more Americans worked in manufacturing. Right?
mhm.
But in that same poll, it was very smart. They asked people, would you be better off if you were working in a factory? Right?
Yeah.
So only 25% of Americans said they would be better off. So 80% say, yeah, we need all these manufacturing plants to open here. Would you go there? No, fuck no.
Like
Hell, no,
yeah,
I don't want to go
I'm
there.
not gonna work
I'm not
there.
going to go
Like
there. And that's why they also had that little link to the Dave Chappelle skit from 2017, right? Making the
mhm.
same point you're making. He's like, I want to wear Nikes, bitch. I don't want to make them shits. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because I don't want to wear Nikes. I don't want to. I don't want to make them. It's about leave those jobs in China. What the hell are you talking about? Why do we want to bring those jobs here, man? I don't want to do that shit.
Yep.
And it's everybody. It's the whole thing. That's why they're talking about they govern on the vibes. That's what Trump's doing. They're governing on the vibes. Hey, we need less illegals here. Let's get them all out. Hey, we need manufacturing plants. Let's bring all these plants. Let's build these plants. But Americans don't want to do the job that they're doing. They don't want to work in these factories. Those jobs already exist and they can't be filled. You
What
know,
Americans want to do, honestly, what they want to do
is have money
is work the same jobs that they're working now
for more money, for a lot more money.
and just get paid an amount that
Yeah.
allows them to take a
Shocker.
vacation, to
Yeah.
take 6 months off to have a child and stay home with them for a while, to not go bankrupt if there's a medical emergency,
Mm-hmm.
like
But when you govern,
to not constantly be in a cycle of debt
yep.
and borrowing because like yo I'm paying off my debt but I'm still just making my minimum payments so it's never really
Mm-hmm.
going down, so now I'm borrowing more money because like
Yeah,
the tire broke this time and now like
that's where I am.
what they want is to not be so fucking squeezed.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that has nothing to do with like moving industries around. It has everything to do with transferring wealth from the top, which has the vast majority of the like America has become dramatically more productive over the last 100 years, but the
Hey,
wages
hasn't.
for most people have not like gone up in a commensurate way at all,
No, it
like
started.
because
It started
all
going
of
up
the
under
money
Biden.
is like captured at the top.
Until Biden, man, it was working with Biden. Problem is, it's not fast enough. It
Yeah,
was
it's
going
not
up.
fast enough.
I know, but the wages were going up. Inflation was going down. Wages were outpacing inflation. But people want something fast. Right? When prices go up, if there's a big crash or something like that, and all the prices go up immediately, people want a fast fix. They want prices to go the other way and make it cheaper.
People
And it just doesn't
but
work that
people
way,
want
and people don't understand.
people want something fast because this problem
Mm-hmm.
has been ongoing, like the need to
Mm-hmm.
solve this problem is like
30,
70
40 years.
years old.
Not even 70. Not even that old. It's like 40 years old. 30 to 40 years old. It's
Do you think
Reagan.
it's
Reagan.
Reagan?
It's from Reagan on, you know? And here's what happened. There's a big collapse. You had the oil collapse, you had the OPEC stuff in the late 70s, the Iran hostage crisis. You couldn't do a fast fix. Jimmy Carter had the appropriate fix, but it's not a fast fix. And what did it happen? Americans said, fuck that, I want a fast fix. He's promising a fast fix. I'm going to go with Reagan. And then they started doing all these policies, you know, that were really going to screw everybody. But like Trump is doing, you have scapegoats, man. You start, you know, going to war in Panama, which they did in the 80s, We go into
Mhm.
Nicaragua. We're going to do this stuff here. You had Beirut. You have all these other distractions. You had the Cold War. You had the evil empire, the Soviets. All right, another good distraction, man. Go back to the whole let's fighting the commie reds. Let's do an arms race. There's a lot of other distractions, right? And yeah, and people take their eye off the ball. That's what happens. People take their eye off the ball for a little bit, and they always want to blame the other. Just like right now, we're doing it to immigrants. Before it was the commies, man. It was the Reds. So they always had somebody else. They deflect. They deflect people's attention from their economic things that's going to screw them. Give them a boogeyman to hate. Keep up the propaganda on that, and then you just keep on going. That's what the right wing does, man. And now it's been like 30, 40 years. After 30, 40 years, hey, the fall of Soviet Union, right? Soviet Union collapsed. Oh shit, Soviet Union collapsed. What happened here? You right? There was no boogeyman, right? For a while, when there's no boogeyman, then people were like, "Yeah, the economy sucks." In '91, right? Fall economy, and then what happened? There's no boogeyman. The economy sucks. They go back to change. They got Clinton, right? Then we had the huge rise in the '90s, man. The best economics everywhere. That's why he got reelected twice. You had a real 50-50, election, 2000. What happened? Boogeyman. Cool, Osama bin Laden. Thank God they did this. Now, boom, Bush's popular sword. They kept screwing the working person. Happened for another, 8 years, right?
Citizens United.
Citizens United. Everything. Keep screwing the workers. Keep screwing the workers. Throw them a boogeyman. Throw this with War on Terror. Patriot Act.
Oh,
You know,
and the gays didn't
the
really work because
gays. The
gays
gay
weren't a
stuff.
good boogeyman.
They weren't a good boogeyman. People got tired of the war. Boogeyman got old. You know,
And they were like, the
Grant.
trans are the real
But
boogeyman.
then what happened? But what happened then? Then we had another big, massive crash, right? And then you got Obama, right? Hey, you got Obama now. Yay! The economy started getting better again. Economy got better. It wasn't fast, but it was in the right direction. People started getting health insurance. People don't have patience. If people would write it out, man, you know, inflation goes down,
People,
wages
dude,
going
patience
up,
is a
things are
luxury
going
you
good.
have to be able to afford.
Yeah, but the thing is, it was rising. People were getting better. It was going better in the 2000s, but people just, it wasn't quite fast enough. They kind of want to change. Hey, you know what? Yeah, there's no big boogeyman to
even
focus on.
even in the
And
Obama years, the wealth transfer is still accelerating. That the rich are taking from the poor. It's like the wealth is still moving upwards and not coming back down.
true. And in
And
some,
and not it wasn't just doing that, like continuing to move that way. It was accelerating in how much was moving that way. And like the financial crisis and the bailing out the banks, and like no one went to jail and no regulations came in to say like, yeah, you can't make bets on bets on bets and like call it a trillion bajillion dollars and then get bailed out when you're fucked, because obviously that's a stupid plan. Like you can't do this shit. Like we did nothing to punish them.
that's not,
All that happens under Obama.
well, people didn't get punished because people want the retribution. They want the instant gratification of seeing somebody go to jail. But they did make a lot of good changes. They just
Okay,
got undone again
but
by
somebody,
Trump.
but a lot of people should have gone to jail. Like this is the thing. It's the same thing that they said about Trump. They were like, if nobody goes to jail when you try to have a coup, when you have an insurrection, there's no disincentive to not do it again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like think of like every movie, okay, where like in the beginning there's like a fight between like the heroes group and the villains group, and like some people on the heroes group get like shot in the shoulder, and like a bunch of the like nameless henchmen get killed, and then the villain leaves. And then he just keeps like fucking with them for the rest of the movie, and he comes back at the end. And when does the movie end? And like the problem is no longer the problem when they kill the motherfucker. Like if you just let them keep coming back to like to fuck you over, like, oh nope, it didn't work this time, try again, like, then they're gonna just keep doing it. Like this story is everywhere. Like
Well,
look at
here's
look
the
at like
thing.
any comic book, like, oh yeah, we don't kill the villains, so then they just try again. Should have just deleted the villains.
Well, what the Supreme Court did in their ruling on the president having immunity, and what this election, the last presidential election, 2024 election, to keep with your whole scenario of villains and heroes, what we saw was the end of Infinity War, Part 1. Okay. He got
Can
his
you
immunity.
can you check the look at the chat real quick? Can you rant for a few
Okay,
minutes?
yeah. So, like,
Cool.
what I say is it's like the end of Infinity War. You know, the Trump, the Supreme Court says, yeah, the president gets unlimited immunity. You can't even investigate anything he does if it's an official act. Setting the stage for it's like just like Thanos collecting his stones, man. It was set up. You know that you can't let him get it, but somehow they let him get that stone anyway. And, then he becomes president, and right about now is when he's snapping his fingers, and killing half of all life, and cool. That's that's about where we are right now. End of first scene, and we're just not quite there yet to get to the next one, Now, I don't think all hope is lost. I don't think that we're quite there. It could be, you know. It could be really awful, and it could go down that horrible slope in the Nazism, and we are dangerously close. I'm still waiting for somebody to play the role of Thor, and come and chop his head off, or whatever. But you know, we're still not quite there, and there's still events that could cause it not to go totally off the deep end. Maybe we need a market crash. If we have a big market crash, which I think is going to come, I think voters have always proven that when they have that big, huge crash, that's when people, kind of come to their senses a little bit and go the other way. And that might be the market crash might be, the analogy's equivalent to Fat Thor chopping his head off, and then we might
Okay, so let's game this out. I like this Thanos.
analogy.
I like this analogy a lot, actually. But so let's game it out outside of the analogy. Like, what is so like the first thing. It's a good analogy. It's like the first thing that happens in the solution um was killing Thanos,
Yeah,
right? But what you see very clear, like what they did a good job in that movie of showing, is that killing Thanos does not
Didn't
fix the
solve
problem.
everything. It doesn't. It doesn't solve
Then,
everything. And then all those people
yeah,
came back. Oh my God, what happened? Oh my God, you moved on. You got married. You have another family.
no,
I
but
was
like killing Thanos didn't solve that because they still had
correct.
to. They had to
Deal
do
with
a whole bunch of other. They had to go back and undo it. You know, they had to go back in time to
yeah.
like prevent it from happening to get
hmm
everyone back.
Which you can't
But
do. Which that we can't do. But I think otherwise it's a good analogy because that's like what we
yeah,
would be. We can
so
stop him
stopping Trump would be
cutting his
like
head off. And boom.
a part one, okay?
Yep.
Stop whatever
There
kind
is
of
no
way that
undoing it.
takes.
There is
But
no
like,
undoing it. There is just
what does it look like? Like, what are the real things that would happen that could happen that would be us winning?
well
Like,
here. Here's the
Is Kilmar coming home and the
I
Supreme
think he's
Court holding in like some Trump administration being, you know, as like the contempt, somebody goes to jail? Like,
oh no,
is
that's not
that
gonna
the
happen.
system holding?
Well, maybe if the Supreme Court in their rulings rules as part of one of their things that, flagrantly disobeying a court order by definition is not an official act. And you would get no immunity for that. They could do
Hmm.
that. I mean, the Supreme Court already in their official immunity, presidential unlimited immunity ruling, did say they left into that ruling that they are basically the sole arbiters of what is and what is not an official act. You know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe there is threat of jail time. Maybe there is threat of these things. Hey, that can't be an official act if you're going against a Supreme Court rule. If you're going against the courts, by definition, you're breaking the law. That is not an official act because you can't have an official act of breaking the law. Maybe. So
Mm-hmm.
that could happen. I don't think these people are coming home for years, though. I mean, I don't think they're coming home for years. I think that all those people sent there, and some of them aren't going to make it. A lot of those people, we're going to be watching news stories in 4 years or 5 years when these people, I think, will come back beaten, PTSD, disabilities, horrible things are going to happen to them over the next 4 years. Some of them will die in custody. There'll
Mm-hmm.
be lawsuits against the government. The government's going to have to pay their families money. We're going to have, I think, here's what's going to happen. I think it'd be a huge market crash. More than anything, a huge market crash. Now, we're going to screw over. This is going to be such a dark place before it gets better. But sometimes it has to get dark in order for it to get better because people will just blindly clap their hands like seals. Hey, America's so strong. We're number one. Yay. It takes a big, huge crash. It takes horrible events to shock people into reality and say, hey, things aren't good. Maybe we need like 30% unemployment, 40% unemployment, recession, depression type levels. So
You remember
people will
this is what
be.
I said that
But
I
here's
thought
the
Trump
thing.
was going to be the first time.
Yeah.
The
But
shock
here's
to
the,
the system.
but here's the thing. I don't think it'll swing in such a way that you think it will. I think it'll be more like at the Thanos analogy. All these people can come back. They will get rid of the problem. We will start to rebuild stuff. We'll get some things back, and we're going to be in a state of, wow, we are way worse off than we were 4 years ago. And we got to get better from here. But I don't think it'll be some transformative thing. You got people in the Supreme Court who aren't going to allow it to happen. You're still going to have that conservative majority. You know, I don't think just based on the electoral math in the maps of this country, you're not going to get some huge 70, you're not going to get 67 Democratic senators in there. You're not going to get those kind of things. You'll get a majority. I think they'll get a majority back and everywhere. I think they will be able to enact changes, undo damage, start fixing everything, get everything stable, and put us back on the nice path of rebuilding and moving ahead and good growth and everything like that. And what's going to happen? You can't fix everything in 4 years. And that's what I worry about because people are so damn impatient.
You can't fix everything in 4 years. You can fix one thing.
Yes, but like Biden
You can.
fixed a
It's like a
whole
classic.
fuckload of
Like, you
things.
can do anything, not everything. You can do
It-
anything. You can do anything. If Trump wanted to end the war in Ukraine in within 24 hours,
You give
he
Ukraine a
could.
bunch of nukes. Hey,
Exactly.
Ukraine, here you go. Here is 25,000 nukes, and here is the best things here. And hey, you know what? I think you guys need about a squadron of 150 F-35s, and I think you need this, and I think you need that. You need the best shit, man. You know what? You don't have a
Yeah,
military? Let's give you a couple of carrier task forces. You know what I mean? Just go nuts, man. Yeah, they could. They could end the war real quick.
exactly. They could
It
have
ain't going
ended
to
it
happen.
real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can't do that without a cost and without
Mm,
provoking Russia, right?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't do it for free. You can't do it at the same time as you can have a trade war with China, but you can't have a trade war with China while also having a trade war with
The rest of the world.
everywhere else, including the island of penguins, because you're a
Yeah.
fucking moron, right? Like, so
Yeah, we'd have a better chance of beating a trade war against China if everybody else knew that we were their friends, and EU and Canada didn't think that we're going to try and invade them and help Russia. Yeah, you lose all credibility. You pick a fight
yeah,
with everybody. It's
like
kind of hard to win.
you can't have uh you can't solve all of income inequality all at once. You can't. But you can raise the minimum wage to
Yeah,
$50 an hour, and you can
tax the
raise
ultra ultra ultra
the
rich, and yes, you
lowest
pay for it.
marginal tax rate to be like, if you're in the bottom 30% of earners in a year, you pay no tax.
Well, they basically don't anyway now, but yeah, I know they get it back. But I know what you're saying. But like basically, but here's the thing though:
Like,
Biden
you can
did
make
that
some
shit.
really big meaningful swings that will get everyone excited and get people going, "Oh, that affected my life in a meaningful way."
And here's the thing though. But here's the thing I get pissed about. Biden mostly did that shit in 4 years. Minimum wage didn't go up, although the companies kind of almost started doing it themselves while states did it. We got all this investment. We got all these things going. We we made the economy get better. Wages were rising up. Inflation was going. We finished on. They got past the COVID stuff. So many things. Almost everything was finally humming along nicely. You know what I mean? Right at the time the election happens, shit
The
was actually
only
fucking good.
he
You know?
only did the digging us out of the hole part. Like, digging us out of the hole is not sexy.
No, it's not. But that's what the Democrats always have to do.
Okay,
And then
but this is what I'm saying, is this is not what they always have to do. The Republicans get away with, like, oh, we're giving away a $5 trillion tax cut.
it's what we've had to do
What
for the
could you
last
imagine?
years, man.
Could you imagine if the Democrats gave $5 trillion to the lowest 50% of wealth holders in the country? If they just gave $5 trillion to the bottom,
Well, yes, I do. But here's the
and what
other
that would
thing:
look like is like
inflation.
they would look like
Inflation would
100
skyrocket.
million people getting like 200K.
Yeah, but here's the thing: then costs would skyrocket, and inflation would overnight fucking go ballistic, and we'd be paying. You'd be paying $30 for a dozen eggs instead
Okay,
of
but
6.
yeah, prices would go up, but wages would go up, and no one would have any debt. So the cost of borrowing money would go way down because no one would have any debt.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe there would be unintended consequences if you went that fast. The thing
Look, man,
about giving the rich people a lot of money
if you
that
can
doesn't
give
hurt
5 trillion
inflation.
to the top, you can give 5 trillion to the bottom.
Here's the difference, and here's the difference. You give 5 trillion to the top. What do they do with it? They hoard it. It doesn't go back into the economy.
They
It
buy
doesn't
the
cause
next.
inflation.
They make it so that Facebook buys Instagram is what happens when you give 5 trillion to the top. Is they consolidate, they monopolize. You go from having, 85 different weapons manufacturers in the military industrial complex to having seven.
That's a little different. I mean, that's different. That's different. That's corporate monopolies. You know what I mean? And that's things that's different than just tax breaks to the rich. You know what I mean?
But
That's
this is what
business
they
practices.
do. They invested in, like,
We could just
excuse me, the way
enforce
that this
the.
has happened, like, they
We could just
invested in
enforce the anti.
BlackRock or
Here's the thing: they could just enforce the antitrust laws. They're the Sherman antitrust or not Sherman antitrust. The monopoly. Is it Sherman antitrust? I believe that is. Yeah, the Sherman antitrust laws. They could just enforce that and not let people do these big, massive, mega mergers and shit. They could just enforce that, and then that wouldn't happen. I mean, they just don't because
they don't.
they collect money from these people and they get donations,
Because
and that's
exactly,
excuse
because
me, excuse
now
me,
the
excuse
money
me,
is tied into the
gratuities,
elections because
gratuities,
money is speech.
gratuities. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, just giving the tax rates to the rich people, that's why it doesn't cause inflation, though. The thing you're talking about is a little different. It's tangentially related, but it's not the same thing. If you gave $5 trillion just boom to the poor, yeah, you'd have inflation go rampant. Now, what you could do on your thing is very similar. I mean, there's similar ideas. You could simply say, "Hey, we're going to tax an extra 5 trillion. We're going to enforce these things here. We're not going to give these rich a $5 trillion tax cut. In fact, they're going to get a big tax increase, or just take out some of the loopholes and make them pay. Without the loopholes, whatever. You get 5 trillion more dollars. You could just use that to uh, you don't have to just give it to people. I wouldn't.
I
I
mean,
would not be in favor of just giving it to people in direct payments like they did with COVID stuff. Because that does spike inflation. But you could do it in other ways. You could make it so that universities are free. You could do that. Tuition paid by the government. You could do things like that, right? Which in effect do the same thing. You know what I mean? It's a cost that the person doesn't have to have, right? There's a lot of things you can do with it rather than just putting it directly immediate stimulus into the economy, because that will make people's lives much happier. You'd get voters, but inflation would go skyrocketing.
I don't think that it would. Honestly, I don't think that it would. I think people would pay off their debt, and and every time you pay off your debt, you're just building wealth. Like that's the first thing everyone would do. Like everyone gets $250,000. The first thing they do is they pay off their car and they pay off their house, they pay off their credit card debt. That's the first thing.
No, it's not
Then a
necessarily.
then a
It
then a
should be. It should be
like
probably, but it's not. There are so many people say, "Oh my God, paying off your debt is stupid. You can put $250,000 into the stock market right now, and then you will make more money over the long run rather than paying off your debt." And there's a lot of truth to that, by the way. You know what I mean? But and then something else happens, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, the stocks went down. I still haven't paid off everything off." And they lose their job, and now that
okay, but
doesn't
then
mean they're going to pay
look,
off their debt.
money going into the stock market also isn't going to cause inflation. That's the same shit that happens when you give it to the rich people.
Yeah, or crypto or some other bullshit. You never know, man. I mean,
Like
either way,
a bunch of people would pay off their debt. A
yeah,
bunch of people would invest in assets. And what it would be is it wouldn't be it wouldn't there would be a ton of action on like the goods markets because everybody would buy a Mac and a car and a new iPhone,
and
etc.
everybody has that big chunk of free money right off the bat, and they start buying stuff. Everybody's going to raise prices. That's how it works. I mean, that is how it works. Everybody has money to buy stuff. Everybody starts buying stuff. Everybody's going to raise prices. You know, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just saying. I can't remember how we got onto this subject because
We were
this is
talking about what
death.
we went down a
Rabbit hole.
what is
Oh yeah, that Thanos
Avengers
thing.
Endgame Part
Yeah,
2
and
look
and I
like?
think more realistically is we would snap our fingers. Shit's going to get really bad, and the Democrats are going to have to do what the Democrats always have to do. At least, I mean, they had to do it. Biden had to do it. Obama had to do it. Clinton had to do it. To some degree, Carter had to do it. Not as much. It wasn't an economic collapse when he took over. It was just a. It was more of a. I mean, it was a trust thing. They had corrupt Republicans before him. I mean, Democrats always have to clean up messes. You know what I mean? They always have to clean up somebody else's fuck ups and messes, and they have to kind of like, okay, guys, we have to start over. Let's start over.
We should
And
make
that's what
somebody
really
else
happened.
clean up their mess.
Was that?
We should make them clean up our mess.
Yeah. Well, kind of hard to
We're
do
gonna
that
get. Well,
if we keep cleaning up the
they're
mess.
gonna yell about how we've made a mess no matter what we do. Like when you come in with Biden and you like work your mop like a 70-year veteran of the janitorial scene and you clean it up real good. They're still gonna say that you just like spent all the money on like booze and champagne and fucked hookers the entire time. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. They're still going to accuse you of doing the worst shit. So what you should do is whatever the fuck you want. Don't clean it. Don't clean it. Fuck it. Don't clean it. If they're not going to clean it, I'm not going to clean it either. I'm not cleaning up after you.
Hmm.
You're going to talk about how I just did all this horrible shit? Like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to just dump money on people so that when you come out and say, like, oh, it was so horrible and Biden's ruining the economy, and be like, I don't know. I bought a new truck.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
Maybe. I mean,
look,
maybe they didn't.
look.
Maybe they didn't go that
My
far.
mama don't like Biden, and I don't really love them gays. But like, my new truck is brand new, and man, that baby's got a V8 and
Maybe.
it sings.
Yeah.
Like, like it's that simple. Like,
Yeah. But
but
that's
so
just
before we get into like wrapping up, I do want to like this was an analogy from the Bill Burr thing that was really good. So I wanted to like to share it here because like that was the only place that I heard it, and I thought it was really good. And he broke down the economy and the taxes into numbers that make sense to people. He was like, look, we're a family. We make $50,000 a year. We spend $70,000 a year on our credit card. We have $370,000 of debt. What Trump is saying we should do is
tax ourselves.
is give away $50,000, so a year's worth of income or a year's worth of expenses. You know, uh, he's basically saying we should increase our expenses to $120,000 a year on the credit card while we're still making only 50,000. You know, like when you put it in that context, it seems like abject nonsense. You know, like if you make $50,000 a year and you spend $70,000 a year on your credit card, like your credit card, you know what I mean? No one would give you any more money after that.
Yep.
Yeah. So I really like those numbers, but like when it's not 5 trillion and 7 trillion and 37 trillion, those are like magic numbers. They're not real, you know. But 50,000, 70,000, 370,000, those are the numbers that everyday people live in.
Mm-hmm.
Those numbers make such sense. Okay, so let's try to uh, let's enter our uh, wrapping it up phase. Um, Give me a prediction or a what could go right.
What's gonna go right is that within 2 or 3 months, shit is gonna be going so wrong that I don't think Republicans are gonna be able to get away with doing much of anything they want to do because the public sentiment will be so against what they're doing because shit is gonna be so bad that I think they're gonna be real hard pressed to get anything else they want to get done. I think the backlash will be like, "Oh my god, these fuckers are suggesting this? No fucking way! You guys have had enough." And I think it'll just be, I think it's gonna be bad. I think we're a few months away from things being really really bad.
It's
That's
already
all I can
really
say.
bad.
And that's a good thing. That's the best.
I feel like the only reason things aren't bad right now is because of like Democrats doing so much to like
Fight them
save
to bit.
Republicans from themselves. And it's exactly this thing that I said that they shouldn't do is that they like don't save them. Like they voted for Republicans. Let us have Republican rule.
Hmm.
Like let them whip their dick out and fuck
Actually,
our wives in front of us. Like let it
all right.
be horrific.
Time out for a second because I know you're in the wrap it up phase, but I was reading this article actually about why Schumer and Shaheen and all of them are like. There's a whole article how they're all breathing a sigh of relief that they did what they did on the budget thing because for that reason, right now, the Trump administration is imploding on their own, and nobody can blame the Democrats. And they're like, they're all saying like they actually finally feel vindication now, and like Fetterman and a lot of other people are even saying, yeah, it looks like they luckily did make the right call by not shutting the whole government down. You know, a month and a half ago, and making all this pain accelerated a little bit because the Democrats didn't get blamed for anything, and now all of the focus is on the Republicans, and everything's falling apart, and the Democrats are not the ones being blamed for it. It's just thought.
I still want the radical change that only comes from people in the streets. I still want the radical change that only comes from everyone being
But it's going to
aware of
happen.
how fucked they are and
Yeah, but
yelling
know
about
what?
it at the same time.
This administration is trying to do it, and the Democrats they have to stop some. They have to try to fight some of this stuff, man. We cannot allow the government to completely get away with just disappearing anybody it doesn't want without going to court and just shipping them off to a gulag. I mean, that's a hill we have to die on. Otherwise, we're all really going to die on that hill. Like literally, we will all get sent there if they don't stop this shit. You know?
So I guess on the same trend, my what could go right is this is the same as yours. Is that the Republicans could continue cutting off their nose to spite their face. And my prediction, however, is very grim. My prediction is that it will not matter because they have already captured enough of the levers of power that it is rigged. And the reason they don't care about shooting themselves in the foot is because they don't have to run another race.
Maybe. All right, so we did a what could we go right? What could go wrong? What could get worse? I have a couple ideas on that because I think we're about to roll over on Taiwan, and I think we're about to let Taiwan get taken over by China in an effort to let's stop this whole trade war nonsense. China wants to make a deal. We know what China wants. China wants to take over Taiwan. I think the Trump administration, just like they signaled that they're going to just give up and move on from Ukraine because we're tired of it, I think he's going to say, hey, you know what? This economic news is really fucking me over. Yeah, sure. Go ahead and take Taiwan.
Doesn't China give us 90% of our chips?
No, Taiwan does.
Like
The world.
makes 90% of the world's chips?
Yep. Taiwan does, yes.
Yeah, so that's not going to be great.
No, it won't be.
It's not a great deal, especially when we're canceling the CHIPS Act.
I know.
It's not how you fight China.
But it's not China has the chips. Taiwan has the chips. They want to take over Taiwan.
All right. Is that it? Are we?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think.
Okay.
But
Good afternoon and good luck.
Good luck. Good luck to us all. All right.
Okay.
Bye. So, but yeah, like